Hey YouTube, we're back for a Wednesday video, and this is a Morphs 101. So really excited to share this with you. It's something we've not really done in a while, and this is talking about a specific marker for a heterozygous animal. So there's one that is actually very quite reliable, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today and see what you can learn. So the one marker that's very reliable in ball pythons is het pied markers. So it's a certain thing that you can look for on your het pieds and your pos het pieds. That's a really good indicator that it's a carrier of the pied gene, even though it doesn't show it. So there's basically two different kinds of het pied marker. There's the ringer, which is when it shows kind of like a white spot on the lower third of the body, a big white spot kind of climbing the back of the snake from the sides. And then there's another kind which is called train tracks or tram tracks along the bottom of the snake, which are black lines that run along the sides of the tail, and they're very bold. So let's go look at those in person and talk about how reliable those markers are. So we're going to start with a couple normal looking snakes, and these are actually both het pieds. This one has a relatively normal belly. Okay, so see, it has just some kind of standard checkering on the belly, which is quite normal for a normal, but it has a little bit of black, markings here on the sides of the belly towards the tail. And that's going to be on the outside of the main kind of center, the white scales in the belly. See these black markings? That's really kind of subtle het pied markers. Now she is 100% het pied, so that shows you that they don't all have really strong markers. But now we're going to show you another one that has really strong markers. And this is exactly what we look for when we're looking for het pied markers on a snake. And this girl is a big double het, clown pied. But you see on her, she has really strong, kind of up here it's kind of typical belly, but when it gets towards the tail, has really strong black, almost like someone took a Sharpie down both sides of the tail. And in my experience, when you have a possible het pied and it has these markers, it's almost a guarantee that it's going to prove to be het pied. And so it's one of those things, if you're holding back animals and looking for something to hold back, you're going to want to do ones with those markers. So the interesting thing comes when you're looking at how some of these other genes, when you put like pastel and yellow belly and fire and orange dream, how those markers translate at that point. So we're going to go look at some of those now and see how those look. So the next one we're going to look at a couple blackheads, one of which is not het pied. This one's not het pied. It's a very typical belly, has a little bit of markings down here, but it's not very strong. What we look for is this kind of markings really strongly all the way up the tail as a good het pied marker. So this is a blackhead that is not het pied. And now we're going to show you one that is, and what a really strong het pied marker looks like. Okay, so here is an excellent example of some of the stronger levels of het pied markers. You see it has the black line running all the way up, almost to halfway up the snake or even higher. It's got a little bit of what we call a ringer here, which we'll talk a little bit more about that, where the white starts to come up a little bit up the side of the snake from the tail. And so this is a girl that is 100% het pied and it's blackhead as well. And beautiful female and a great example of het pied markers. I'm just going to keep throwing a few examples at you guys here so you can see the repetition, see some of the variations. This is a mahogany double het monarch pied, but again, really strong markers. A little bit of a ringer coming up here where the white's trying to come up the side of the snake on both sides, and really strong black markings all the way down. Here's a little bit of variation. This is actually a super orange dream clown het pied. I want you to see what the belly is doing here. We have the same sort of thing going on, where instead of having the big black markers, what you end up having is this really light line. But see how far it's coming up the side of the snake? It's on both sides. That's a sign that it's going to prove 100% het pied. Of course, it already is. We know that. But that's a good way to learn markers, is to actually have 100% hets and see how they differ from ones that aren't hets, and just see what the variation is. So now we're looking at some babies and look at it on a small scale, because most people, when they hatch these, they're going to be looking at the tails of babies. So let's check this out. This one has a perfectly normal belly, completely standard, and they're extremely variable, the bellies on these. Any normal is extremely variable. But just to kind of give you a baseline, what you're looking at just kind of speckling, kind of random pattern. The alien heads on the side continue to go all the way down to the tail, very standard. Nothing particularly different about that. So let's take this one and compare it to one that is het pied. So here's a comparative one. This is an orange dream, and again you see The difference there between the belly is this has a very, very clear belly, and then lots of black tracks all the way down the edge on both sides. It's a really, really strong het pied marker. Now, orange dreams can be difficult because orange dreams a lot of times will have a certain amount of this anyways, but when you add het pied, it makes it even stronger. Here's another example in a desert ghost, and this snake is deep in shed, but this is fire and orange dream and desert ghost and het pied, and it wants to bite me. But look at the belly on this. Look at how clear that is, and then you have really, really, really strong black markings all the way down. Kind of when you have fire and orange dream, they kind of combine together with the het pied markers to give you these really, really crazy tracks. And it's not just on the belly, actually. What happens is because the belly has these black markings, it actually has an elongated pattern here towards the tail too. So sometimes you can actually look at the top of the snake and you say, well, if it has really, really, really long elongated pattern towards the tail, the bottom of that pattern will have the black edging. So you can kind of see het pied markers without even looking at the bellies if it's really, really strong effect like this. Here's two more. I'm just showing you in different variations so that you can recognize it in different combos. So these are from the Xanthic Pie Clutch. So this is the Hurricane OD Vanilla, and check that out. It's 100% het pied, but look at the markers there. The black lines running down the sides, clear belly in between, and again you get the elongated pattern here. Up here it's very normal, and then you get the elongated pattern and the black edging. And then when you add the Super OD YB Inchy Vanilla, look at the edging on that. So it's really coming, at this point, pretty far up the side, and you actually see the edging instead of being on the belly, it's actually on the side of the snake all the way down, this bright orange. Look at that, really, really, really cool. It's the beginning of a little ringer there, the little white speck trying to come up the side there. Ringer, again, is another indicator of het pied. And a ringer is basically an extreme form of the het pied markers. It's just a little bit more visual. So those are some examples of het pied markers. The other one is a ringer, but a ringer, although they're very, very visual and very, very cool, is only really an extension of a het pied marker. All it is the het pied marker kind of coming up the side a little bit and creating a white wrap. And it's always in that last third of the snake. Anything higher than that really is not considered part of that het pied thing. We've had some ringers that are high up the snake. It's not really part of the same thing. But when they have a ringer, it's just an extra indication of really, really strong markers, an extra indication that it is het pied, and they're super cool when you see them. All right, so those are some examples of what het pied markers look like. But honestly, there's some big questions that are out there that I get these questions all the time. And the first one is, if your snake has het pied markers and it's not possible het pied, what are the chances that it's going to be het pied? And I did a little experiment when I first got into this. I bought a bunch of adult females from different sources when I was first getting into this industry. It's been almost 20 years since I've done this. But we got about a total of 10 that had really strong het pied markers. And when I saw them, I was like, wow, those are just as strong as you could possibly get. I bred all 10 of those to a pied male, didn't get a single pied. So what we know from that is that het pied markers, that look, can occur very naturally among normals. So if you're seeing them and your snake is not pos het pied, it really has very little significance. Now in pos het pieds, like actually came from a visual or from a het pied, so they're pos het pieds, and you see those markers, in my experience, you have a very, very, very strong chance, like 90% plus. I've never had one that was a pos het pied with markers that did not prove. However, there is also a pretty significant percentage of 100% het pieds without markers. So if you get pos hets without ringers, it doesn't mean that they are not het pied. So basically, in a nutshell, het pied markers on possible het pied animals are very reliable, but the absence of them is not a proof that they're not. When I'm holding back animals personally, I'm holding back ones with het pied markers, knowing that some of the ones I let go still have a possible chance. And if it's a really nice animal, sometimes even without markers, I'll give it a shot. But it's something that you can definitely use. I would say probably 100% het pieds, probably 75% plus of them have pretty strong markers. So it's a really, really good, reliable thing for you to look at in your collection when you're working with pieds and make more of them in the future. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope that helps. And this has been a new Morphs 101. We're trying to do more of these and just keep introducing you guys to the different ways of identifying these snakes. It's really pretty complicated now. When I first got in, there was only like 5 mutations in all ball pythons, and I get to learn them a little bit every year. Well, I can't imagine going into it the learning curve that so many people have now, but hopefully these videos help. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you again next week.